Well, hello there and welcome to Kerbal Space Program 2. This is something I have been excited about for quite some time. It's had a bit of a rocky launch. It's currently still in early, I say still in early access, like it's not going to be in early access for probably a couple of years, I'd have thought. I don't know what I think their roadmap has features, doesn't really have a timeline from what I recall. But yes, early access Kerbal Space Program 2. I should say a massive thank you to the publishers for providing a key so I can take a look at the game. That is much appreciated. But yes, if you're a bit of a Kerbal fan, you've probably been following the progress of the development. That's a whole other thing. There are people who've done videos just on the development because it wasn't done by the original team, it was done by a new team. It's got a new publisher, and yeah, a bit of a rocky launch really. I think it's fair to say that it's in early access, but it costs a fairly staggering amount of money, particularly, well, for an early access game, and compared to the previous Kerbal Space Program, it's quite expensive, and it's launching without a huge number of features that the game itself has. Obviously the game is now, Kerbal Space Program Original is now out of early access, but this only currently has the sandbox mode in, similar to what Kerbal had when it first launched, I don't know, in like 1924, whatever it was. But a lot of things missing that people were kind of hoping would be there, and it's also had some performance issues, and people aren't happy with the graphics and say that modders have done better on Kerbal. And I think modders always get a bit of an easier ride to a certain extent, because they're not working within the team of developers and with the publishers breathing down their necks, or whatever publishers happen to do. I'm sure they're not all that nefarious. But yeah, I'm still very excited to take a look. I have played a fair bit of Kerbal Space Program OG, but not for a long time. Like, I played a little bit when it just had its sandbox, but I think when it started doing it like its career mode, because I'm someone, I like a little bit of guidance, I like some structure to my games. So when they had the career mode and they actually had the science gathering and all that, that's when I really got into it. Played it a lot for a couple of months. Not anything compared to some of the really hardcore players, but I think I've got like over 100 hours in Kerbal Space Program. But as I say, that was a long time ago. So I'm going to be a little bit rusty. I have had a very quick go at this. Normally I don't tend to go into things I tend to go blind into these sort of quick look videos. Quick look, I stopped calling them that because they started being monumentously long. These first look videos, I like to go in blind so that you can get my first hand experiences, but I thought because it's a pretty direct sequel to the original Kerbal, I actually wanted to get up to speed a little bit, so I'm not just spending most of the video just faffing around figuring out how to actually get off the launch pad. I am loving this background idle animations that are going on, by the way. Now, suffice to say, we're going to build nothing like this, not even close to this. Or I suppose it's going to have this sort of shape at the top, but none of this gubbins down here, none of that at all. So we're going to start a new campaign. We're going to leave it on normal. What does the actual difficulty do when you only have a sandbox mode? Docking tolerances. And it allows you reverts and your quick saves and stuff. Well, that's fine. We'll leave it with that. So we'll call this... caps lock's on apparently. Man of the Antz. I'm going to just do an early access thing there. Obviously, we're going to call our agency the Colony. And let's pick a flag. Had to just have a quick cough. Do you know, I quite like this one, actually. I quite like this one. It says pick colours, but I don't know what colours are really going to change, because none of these colours are in the flag. So we'll just do something like this. Brilliant. Yeah, that looks perfect. Set agency colours. Awesome. Right, let's start the campaign. So, like I say, I had a very quick go. I didn't notice any performance problems myself. There have been a couple of patches, at least a couple of patches, since the game was initially released. So I don't know if they've resolved any of that. I am going to skip this. It's typical sort of Kerbal humour, but blah, 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 blah. We're going to skip past it. We're going to go straight over here into the actual Space Center. So hello, welcome to Kerbal Space Center. This campus has everything you need to turn your fledgling space program into the stuff of legends. Our engineers have created a training program that will guide you through building and flying your very first rocket. We're going to ignore that. If you want to start building, go to the VAB, which of course we're going to do. And this is what the Space Center looks like now. So it's a little different. Obviously, the graphics have been upped a little bit compared to the stock original Kerbal. We've got a couple of runways over here. We've got our launch pad over here. If we spin around a little bit. Actually, one of the things I do need to do, one of the things I meant to do, is can I change the sensitivity of the mouse? Can I do that? Can I do that? It's going to tell me I can't do that, isn't it? Well, that's a little frustrating. Maybe it's in there somewhere and I missed it, but I am finding that the rotation on them is quite slow. We also have an additional 3 launch pads over here, which is very, very nice. We've got these little doohickeys here. I guess that's for returning boosters, I'm assuming. Like, what's the opposite of launch? Land? Landing pads. There we go. I figured it out. It's fine. So I can scroll in and out and I can rotate with the right mouse button. I can't figure out a way to move the camera around, and I've pressed every key. There's probably something I'm missing. There's going to be a lot of the shortcut keys that are lost to the midst of time to me in terms of my memory. So we'll figure out what we can. Oh, there's a dock launch as well for water vehicles. Interesting. But what we have available so far, obviously the launch pad. We have the training center over here. We'll click on it just so you can see what it looks like. So we've got the training missions or scenarios over here. But obviously we're not going to do any of that because that's not very Kerbal, is it? Let's go back to Space Center. Got our tracking station. So once you have things in the air, if you had ongoing projects that were perhaps flying to somewhere quite far away, obviously you're not going to sit there and just watch it for like actual real life 6 hours as it goes by at 100 times speed. You would leave it and you'd go and do something else in the game. And this is where you would do that. But obviously we're not dealing with that today. And then we have the launch, the vehicle assembly building itself. This, I believe, is the science building. One of these would be the crew building or the administration building or something like that. But none of that's currently in it. That is really what I'm really looking forward to. It's probably going to be a long, long time till any of that's in the game. But that's what I'm really looking forward to. Having a bit of structure around the career mode. They are changing the career mode, I believe, as well. They're changing up a bit. Because I quite liked the science gathering with the tech tree in Kerbal. I wasn't such a big fan of the final release career mode, if you like, we did missions to get money and then use that to buy parts. I didn't enjoy that so much. But yes, that'll all be unlocked as part of the early access. But it looks very nice. If you don't know, I'll just give you a quick rundown on my PC specs. I've got an AMD 5700X, which runs at about 4 gigs, something like that. And I think it's 8 cores, 16 thread, I think. And I've got an NVIDIA 3090. So in theory, we shouldn't have any performance problems. But we have seen people on the internet, on the YouTubes, on the Reddits, with PCs significantly more powerful than mine, with the game really struggling when you get anything slightly complicated. But I say that was when it first launched. I haven't really paid a lot of attention to it since then. So it may be that they've sorted that all out. Excuse me. So this is our VAB, where we can assemble vehicles to take wherever you want to go. This is the parts picker over here. A good starting rocket has a command pod, an engine and a fuel tank. You're not wrong. You can construct several assemblies or sections of your vehicle at the same time. The assembly marked with the green icon is your launch assembly. That's what will go to the launch pad. Use the engineer's report to see how well your vehicle will perform. It will give you useful stats and potential problems. For example, you can use the engineer's report to see if you have a thrust-to-rate ratio over 1, which means your rocket will actually leave the pad. We also have a trip planner down here. Use it to plot a destination and ensure you can get there. And once you're ready to fly, hit the launch pad button. Well, that seems obvious. And the training center, blah, blah, blah. Stop banging on about the training center. I'm not going to do it. So I'm just orienting myself so I'm facing it towards the front of the rocket. And then I guess we'll just get straight down to building. I haven't had a look at a lot of this stuff down here, actually. Obviously, we have no parts down there. Parts manager. Oh, this is... so this actually gives you the delta V you need to get to something. And the delta V for each section, target, each part of your trip. But we will be doing something very simple, just for time purposes more than anything. We will just be trying to head to the Mun, which is the equivalent of the moon. It's the closest thing. It has a same elliptical plane to the east-west. So as long as you launch towards the east, which is pretty standard in terms of space rocket launchery, as far as I'm aware, then should be, if all goes well, we should be on the correct elliptical plane, if that's the right term, so we can head straight to the Mun. And there is another moon, which is called Minmus, which is the smaller moon, which actually has a lesser delta V, which is interesting. Why does it have a lesser delta V? 1270, 150, 180. It's probably because it's got less gravity, so it takes less to... it takes less to land on it. That's one of the reasons. So, it says we need to pack a bit more because we currently have nothing. So let's close all this off. So the first thing we need is a pod somewhere for our Kerbal to sit. You can have automated vehicles, and I believe I think when you start in the Kerbal campaign, I believe you start with automated or remote controlled vehicles at the very least. But we're going to start off with a nice standard control pod, which looks like this. Oh, that's our colours. That's why we picked colours. That's quite cool. Very garish. I should have maybe paid a bit more attention to what we were doing there. I believe you can change. I can't see anything there, but I think there is some way. Oh, there it is. The color manager down here. So you can change your colors. You can do it by specific parts as well, of course. So we've got that. I would normally then put a control wheel underneath. Well, I suppose saying what we actually first need probably is a decoupler, right? This is the favorites menu. So this is the stuff that's assuming you're going to use, which is probably, to be honest, really accurate. This is the stuff that I'm going to use. But let's have a little bit of a look through here. Now, if you're really into Kerbal, if you're someone who's been really looking forward to this, played a lot of the game, you've probably already watched 30 videos from people who know a lot more than me, who have looked at these parts and gone, oh, this has now got a massive 0.898 tons. In the original game, it had a massive 0.94 tons. I'm not going to have those stats memorized. And as I say, my target is to get to the Mun and potentially have a go at coming back to Kerbal, which is the name of the planet, the home planet in this game. But I'm going to be a little rusty. Now, of course, if you're used to me, you'll be used to me being a bit rusty in pretty much everything I ever play. So that won't be a surprise to you. So I'm looking for... Wouldn't be in fuel tanks, wouldn't be in engines. I don't think it'd be in there. Wouldn't be in coupling. Wouldn't be in aerodynamics. Wouldn't be in thermals. As one of the things, this is again one of the things that's missing from the games. There's no, and I haven't seen it in the patch notes that I've looked at either, but there's no re-entry heat. So you can just fling your vehicle into the atmosphere of Kerbin at 10,000 miles an hour, and it'll be absolutely fine as long as you slow down enough by the time you hit the surface. Whereas you would normally expect there to be a bit of a heat on re-entry, so you'd usually have a heat shield underneath your pod, so you can get through the atmosphere without, blowing everything all up to hell. Apologies if you don't like the word hell. I try not to swear in these videos. A couple of things do but they do occasionally slip through. But I do try to be as PG as possible. Where would I find... Stabilize? Is that one thing? A reaction wheel? That's what I'm thinking. You'll have to excuse me. You can probably tell my throat's a little bit today for some reason. I did just drink like a pint of fresh orange juice and it's just made me a bit cloyy, I think. But we want a reaction wheel, something like that. But no, in fact, what I wanted first, I got myself confused because I was going to look through everything. We want a coupler first. So a coupler will give you an option down here. So these are your sort of actions you can perform whilst in flight. And the coupler will detach whatever it is attached to. So if we put a coupler there, when we decouple, everything underneath this will detach from the pod. Which means we can then work our way down to Kerbin with just a little bit there to worry about. So we are going to need, on top of our craft... We are going to need... Where would we find a parachute? Where would we find a parachute? Nothing obviously Oh, do you know what we can do? We can just search for it. Parachute. Now, I couldn't be bothered to type in the whole thing. Oh, there we go. This is what we want. So we want radial mounted, which means it goes on the side. It's a variation of that one. Yeah, that's right, doesn't it? That's the right sort of size. Perfect. So we've got a parachute on top. We've got a radial coupler there. We then want the RCS control wheel or stabilizer wheel, which I don't know. Was it down here? There it is. So we want the small medium one. That is the craft. They're sort of your standard Kerbin starter craft size. They do have smaller ones and they do have much bigger ones, which look something like that, which is, a little bit excessive for what we're going for. So, what else do we need? Well, we've got somewhere for our Kerbal to sit. We've got a parachute to get them down safely. We've got a control wheel and a decoupler underneath that. As you can see here at the moment, in stage 1, if we hit space when we were out on the launch pad, it would both decouple and kick our parachute off at the same time. So we are going to want to move our parachute up here, so we can now separate those two. It works from bottom to top here, by the way. So you want your first engines at the bottom, and the last thing you're going to need, which is going to be our parachute, towards the top. Normally at this point I'll be sticking all kinds of science bits all over it as well, but obviously there's no science in the game at the moment, so we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to go for a fly. So engine wise, we're going to need a fuel tank. This is going to be the fuel tank which is going to get us off the Mun, assuming we can get off the Mun. So if we do something like this, and then stick on, this looks like my standard sort of Mun engine, like that. Oh, we're going to need something to land on. If we try and land it like that, it's just going to tip over like no one's business. So we're going to need some of these. That looks like the symmetry. Yeah, we'll put it on 3 times symmetry. Pop that about there. And then what you want to make sure is you actually want to... no, it's not. There we go. We want to make sure that if we... There it is. Extend the legs. The legs extend below the engine. Otherwise, they are doing absolutely nothing. So that looks all right to me. So then we're going to need another coupler to go there like that. And then we're going to need all the engines to actually get us to the Mun. So as I say, once we hit this decoupler here, that engine will be exposed, and that's what we use to land on the Mun, and hopefully try and take off from the Mun and perhaps get back to Kerbal. But, you know, these are lofty goals, I imagine, at this point. So what we really want is a really big fuel tank. I want to say really big, I mean the biggest SM fuel tank they have. I didn't know you can get a fuel tank nose cone. Well, that's quite cool. We'll pop that on. Like that. Lovely stuff. Now, do we want to double this up? Why not? Why not? I mean, if we have too much thrust, we've got too much thrust, right? We'll just ditch all. That's fine. And at the bottom of this one, so you can see here you've got your different SM type engines. They do also have different fuel types here as well, which I don't think were generally a thing in Kerbal. I think you just had fuel tanks and engines. I might be wrong, and do feel free to correct me if I am. But you do have very specific different fuel types in the base game here. So if we look here, we've got your methalox fuel, methane fuel, monopropellant fuel, xenon, hydrogen, and then a fuel line. Ah, it's good to know that's there. I'll be probably looking for a fuel line in a minute. Now, I'm pretty sure that the actual most efficient way to get a rocket up into the space and make it the most efficient. I've already said the word efficient, couldn't think of another word off the top of my head, is to just have like a really long tall rocket rather than having boosters on the sides. It's just have a really long tall rocket, but I don't think that looks as good. So we're going to do your sort of standard side mounted boosters alongside this, but for this engine here we're going to want a little bit of control. We've already used this one here, which is quite weak generally, so these are the ones you would use for your what's this one here? Interesting. But I'm looking at these two here. These two are pretty similar. You can see one's a bit heavier, one's got a bit more thrust. What this one is, though, is the swivel engine. And the swivel engine means it gives you a little bit of control. So when you're trying to direct your craft during flight, the engine will swivel to help you, rather than relying just on the control wheel and the little bit of control that comes with your control pod as well. You can also get RCS, monopropellant engines. I think that's not RCS, is it? There is a different RCS one. I did see it somewhere, which is sort of like your little, you know, when you see things dock into the space station and got this sort of pss, pss, just blowing little clouds out to just gently maneuver. That's your RCS. But we're going to want a swivel engine down there. Wonderful, looking good. So if we come down here, then it's missing RCS. Precise maneuvering for docking will be difficult. But as I said, we're definitely not really trying to dock with anything. We can see we've got a thrust to weight ratio of 1.3, so we're going to get off the launch pad. That's great. It doesn't give us our total delta V there. That's parts manager, trip planner. Ah, here we go. So we currently have a delta V of 4,500. So actually not enough to reach the Mun, which would be a bit of a problem. But that's fine, because we're going to resolve that right now. So we're going to go back into couplers, and we're going to want radial decouplers, which sit alongside other bits of your craft. We're just going to go with this one here. We're going to leave it on 3 times. I think 3 times is pretty sensible. Let's pop it up about Pop it up there. That's fine. And then we are going to stick on... the cat's going crazy at the door. Hush, cat, I'm busy. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so I can actually pay attention to what I'm doing. Because we want to make sure it's nice and level. In fact, I probably want it a little bit lower down than the main engine. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And we're going to want to stick another one on the bottom of those. And then, did they say it was a nose cone one? Yeah. Alright. No, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. And then we're going to want some engines on the bottom of these, of course. We will go with the Reliant engines. Biddly biddly pop. Just like that. We're going to have to check all of our staging as well, because it's going to be all over the place. And then at the bottom of here... Was it the bottom of here? No. Ah, a fuel line. So the fuel line is quite a clever thing, and I'm sure they do this a lot in real stuff, but it's not. It's one of these things that when I got really into the original Kerbal, as most people who get into Kerbal, you become a bit of a rocket scientist, essentially. You start learning all these really fancy terms like apoapsis and all this stuff, and you actually get, you know, quite specced up on how to correctly build and launch and maneuver a craft around orbital bodies. It's quite a fascinating subject to get into. But what the fuel line here will do, and if I remember correctly, and we'll soon know if it goes wrong when we try to get off, we want to go from this one to this one. And so what that'll do is, as all of these engines at the bottom, all 4 of these engines that we have, as they're all burning at exactly the same time, because we're going to launch them at the same time. Not at the moment, we'll have to fix that, but they'll all be ignited at the same time. And as all these tanks are emptying, these tanks will also be used to refill this one in the middle. Meaning that when we then decouple the side boosters, the main 2 tanks here will still remain full and we'll have a full amount of thrust to use with our center engine there. That's if I've connected it in the right way. I can see it has actually phased through the body of the fuel tank there. Hopefully that's not going to cause any problems. Right, what else do we need? Oh, I'll tell you what we do need. We need some sort of control, right? We need some wings. Some stabilizers. I'm guessing we want stabilizers, something like this. We'll pop those down, make sure it's nice and centered. And then I might even pop some on the on here as well, just to... Again, we'll pop this down a little bit lower. It's looking pretty fancy, isn't it? It's looking pretty fancy. What is our Delta V? We got 6,800 Delta V, which it looks like it's more than enough to get off, get to the Mun. But the thing with Kerbal is it never goes as you plan. And that, all of these, by the way, these are going to be, like it says, you need 3,400 Delta V to achieve Kerbal in low orbit. This is going to be if you launch in a very efficient manner, which we're quite unlikely to. There is also, although I don't know where it is. Oh wait, do we want stabilizers or control service? It does say control is everything. Nah, it's fine. What's the worst that can happen? What I would like... It's not lights, not ladders, not stabilizers, not RCS, not a parachute. Not communications. There was like a launch pad stabilizer you can use to hold your ship off the ground. They do actually have heat shields in the game, even though they do absolutely nothing at the moment. Where would I find... It's almost like a decoupler, but... The launch clamp, it was red in the original game, so I'd never have noticed that otherwise. Do we want to put a couple of struts? Well, I don't know. We might need a couple of struts, particularly... Oh, no, in fact, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Because our engines here are mounted... quite high up. They're not very central, so we might find there's a little bit of instability towards the bottom of the craft. So just to try and ease that, we'll put a few struts down there, which I'm pretty sure once we decouple will be destroyed as well without any major problems. And so these are our launch. Now it is clipping our wings. I'm not sure if that's going to be a problem or not. I guess we'll find out, won't we? Let's pop those down there. Lovely stuff. It also means as well, actually, that we're going to get like a bit of an extra 10-meter boost that we're not going to have to travel, so that might work out for us as well. Right, so I think our glorious green and blue craft, and I really should have paid more attention to my agency colours. We could maybe just... Oh, I don't want to do that. Just this bit up here, if we get rid of this. I just want to change the colour of this one. Just trying to get something a bit more, you know, channel specific. I feel that that hasn't changed the colour of that part in the slightest. I just set it as agency colours? Oh, right, you have to do that and then click on the part. Yeah, well, at least our main parts, the parts that are going to come back, we're going to have a bit more channel-specific colours. The everything else can be disgusting green. It really is quite awful, isn't it? So, there are many things if you play Kerbal that you will find you do wrong. Time and time again. You will forget to put parachutes on time and time again. You'll forget to put struts on or fuel lines on time and time again. And the most common one is not doing your staging correctly. Time and time again. So at the moment, if we hit spacebar on the launch pad, our ship would just plummet to the ground and nothing would happen. In fact, we're going to hit launch and we're going to see this. Are you ready to fly? Here are a few pointers. This element is your flight cluster, contains all of your flight controls and information. Here you can speed up time or pause time. This is your staging stack. It's a bit late to tell us about that really, isn't it? Remember your fire stage is at the bottom. You could have told us that in the VAB, I'd have thought. And something about the training centre we're going to ignore. So as I said, it does work from... Oh, wow, we are really high up. It does work... I might actually go in and lower that down. We're going to have to go back because as soon as I hit space, it's going to do the first stage here. And this is a sort of mistake you will make in the game. If we hit space... Oh, there's a little countdown. And we're going to let the dramatic countdown go. And we're going to watch what happens when the countdown is finished. And we are going to... inverted commas. Yeah, there we go. That's the sort of very common mistake you will make time and time again. So let's revert to the VAB. Yes, confirm, revert. And we'll wait for the loading. It's actually quite quick. I'm pretty sure the original Kerbal had really horrific load times. But what I want to do is just move... Oh. Not that. I don't want to do that. That looks right. I wanted to move everything. Stop it! Everything down so it looks a little bit more reasonable. There we go. So, we do want to decouple almost immediately, but we want to decouple whilst our engines are also burning. We also want our center engine down here. So when we hit space the first time, it will decouple the launch struts. It will light all 4 engines at the bottom. And hopefully we will blast off into space. Let's get rid of these empty ones. Then we have our radial decouplers. So we'll take off, empty these fuel tanks, disconnect the side boosters. Yeah, because once we've disconnected those, we'll still have the center engine with a full fuel complement, hopefully, if I've done everything correctly. Then we will want to do the radial decoupler, the one that's just there, to open up our engine that's hidden away inside there, which we can then activate. And then for coming back to Kerbin, we want to do the radial decoupler there, which will just leave our command pod. And then the very last thing we need to do is launch our parachute so we can actually, you know, hopefully get our little Kerbal back to Kerbin without any problems. We've just seen this, so we're going to close all this straight away. Right, so this time we should... I don't know if this is supposed to count down at the same time, because it said 8 last time, and this one started on 6. Oh, I like this, I like this. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Look at that smoke coming out. Glorious. So over here is our direction. So the white... Oh, this is going terribly. This is going terribly. The white one is where I'm telling it I want it to go. The green one there, which matches this one over here, the prograde, that is the direction our ship is actually going in. And there is a very fine science as to how quickly you would want to start turning your ship. We are turning our ship 90 degrees, which means we are turning it directly to the east. That is because that Kerbin turns the same direction as the Earth. So your most efficient way of getting into orbit is to turn directly to the east. I have probably completely messed up with sort of the speed and the efficiency you're supposed to do this, and you can see my craft is rotating all over the place. We do have this one down here, this green little circle is SAS, Stability Assist System, which is supposed to really help me from doing this. So we are currently 17,000 meters above the ground. It looks like our fourth engine actually is using up all of its fuel, which is not ideal. 20,000 meters, it still says we're on the surface. I don't know what the heights are to... see, that's actually looking okay. That's looking okay. I might... Oh, I was going to say I might cut our engines, but our other ones decoupled there. So, what we can do now is hit space. And our side boosters will disconnect. I don't know what these are, because we are still going up quite fast. It looks like... It makes it look like we're falling, but that is definitely not the case. And they will you can see we are in orbit. We are in orbit. Excellent. As always, in all things Kerbal, that was a lot more stressful than really it probably needed to be. So as you can see, our current trajectories, this is the map screen. This is where you can see all of the things in the solar system. This is Kerbal, or Kerbin, just here. And you can visit any of these bodies. In the full release for the game, there is supposed to be interplanetary travel, so you can be able to travel to other systems, you can set up supply routes, you can have space stations all over the place. It's, you know, let's just assume everything goes perfectly smoothly with the development. It sounds like it's going to be an amazing, amazing experience. But the first thing we need to do, because currently this is our flight trajectory, so this is our AP, our apoapsis. That is the highest point of our current trajectory. We will hit that and then very promptly go smashing back down into Kerbin. Probably very fast and very painfully. Oh! We do have full fuel. So that was just a bit misleading the way it was showing us. So once we decoupled our 3 side boosters, it has left us with a full fuel complement for our center swivel engine, which is perfect. So what you want to do here is, as you start reaching the apoapsis, we want to align our ship towards our prograde, which means our ship is facing in the direction it is traveling. And then once we get a little bit closer, we will put full thrust on, and we will see this line will slowly start moving around Kerbin until we achieve orbit. Now, I can't remember exactly how high an orbit was supposed to be achieving. Our apoapsis is 91,000 meters, which I think's okay. If we can get a full orbit of around 90,000 meters, that should be fine. But as we get a little bit closer, then it's probably fine to do it there. We'll leave it go a little second longer. You see our boosters there plummeting down towards Kerbin by the look of it. Alright, full boost. Now ideally you want to sort of have your boost so it goes either side of your apoapsis to be really, really efficient. But as I've mentioned, a little bit rusty, that's definitely not going to happen. So we can see our landing target as it currently. So we've now lost our apoapsis. We are now going down towards the ground, so I might want to... Oh, I can't turn that off. Nope, not that way. We're going to go this way. We want to just point it up just a little bit so it's actually not pointing us down towards the ground anymore. I'm going to be pretty sideways, really. We can see this going along here, and in a minute we're going to see that... Oh, that's way too much. We're going to see this go around really, really fast, and it's going to create an orbit, sort of like that. And our periapsis is, it's about 20,000. Let's extend that so we don't think we're going to die at any point. Right, there we go. We now have a nice little orbit around Kerbin. Apoapsis of 90,000, periapsis of 70,000. So we should now be able to orbit around here without doing anything for as long as this little man can stay alive. And in this game currently, as it was in the original Kerbal, there is no life support to concern yourselves with. We don't have to worry about feeding, we don't have to worry about oxygen. He will live quite happily. So in my original Kerbal game, I did lose someone, and I can't remember where I was going. I might just have been going to, not Minmus, what's their version of Mars called again? Duna. It might just have been traveling to Duna, but I ended up with a man just circling around the sun over here, and I made it my mission to go and rescue this poor little guy. I say man, Kerbal. Which I did do. I managed to get there. I managed to get him out of his craft, into the other craft, return him to Kerbal. It was something like 70 years or something absolutely preposterous. He was there just circling around the sun. So yes, that doesn't matter too much. You haven't got to worry about their needs, their survival needs. So, this is the Mun. This is where we want to get. So there are a few, so this, what I was doing down here, where I was clicking on this, where you can click on this and it'll just automatically align your ship. Pretty sure that didn't exist in Kerbal. That all had to be pretty manual unless you had mods in. Or I think some sort of, one of the special advanced components had something like that. But by default, certainly you wouldn't have it. But we do, which is great, so we can just click that and it will just align itself with the prograde. And we want to head to the Mun. So I don't really know exactly how all this works. I literally played, right, I got myself to the Mun, crashed into the Mun, then I was like, right, now's the time to start recording the video. So I haven't really got myself up to speed with all the controls or anything like that. But if we set the Mun as a target, first thing we want to do actually, now that I say that, is we want to just check that our orbit, yeah, it's pretty flat. It's a pretty flat east to west orbit, which means we are pretty much perfectly aligned with the Mun's orbit. If we could find Minmus, where's Minmus gone? Oh, that's obviously way too far. I think it's because I set it as a target, so I've got myself confused there. Oh, I've got myself confused, I should say. Minmus does not have such a nice orbit. Minmus's orbit is a bit more like this one over here, you can see, where it is not a nice east to west flat orbit, and it makes it a lot trickier to get to, which is sort of the point. I've got myself to a point where I can't zoom in anymore. What is going on here? I appear to have lost the ability to zoom. This is problematic. Although we can take a look at our ship. Oh, with that lovely sun behind us, look. With our beautiful colour scheme. We have a problem. We have a massive problem. Oh, Kerbal, I must have hit space at some point. Because as you can see, our main engine is very slowly drifting away from us. That's going to cause us problems. That's going to cause us massive. We only now have this tiny little engine. It's got a Delta V of 2000, which isn't bad. But we now have to try to get to the Mun with nothing but that, whilst we watch our engine beautifully drift behind us. I mean, that is an absolutely staggeringly beautiful shot. Just pop a... Is there like a... I suppose there's a photo mode in this, is there? But that would be that's my screenshot right there. I just want to get rid of that, really. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I'm also in a bit of a blind panic now because yeah, we now need to get to the Mun with a tiny little engine. So anyway, so we're gonna guess that if we do a burn, because we want to get to the Mun. So I didn't really talk a lot about the launch that I did, but when you're trying to escape the gravity of a planet, you don't just launch yourself straight up. You do what I did, which is you tilt your ship so that you can achieve a nice orbit around it. Ideally, if we were just trying to break orbit, what we would do is we'd actually burn at the periapsis. Because if you're burning at the periapsis, you are increasing the height of the apoapsis. And we can actually see this, what would happen. So if we... Hello? Hello? No, you're not going to do it for me? I just want to create maneuver. Why can't I create maneuver mode? Maneuver. Maneuver mode. What are you doing? Is it because it's paused? It is. It's because it's paused. Right, okay. That's fine. We can let it play for a second. If we create a maneuver plan here, and a maneuver plan is this little yellow market here where you can say, what I'm going to do when I reach this point is I'm going to burn in one of these directions, which all have very fancy names, but all we really care about is prograde and retrograde, which is, you know, forwards or backwards, essentially. Unfortunately, the periapsis is right in the way. Oh, there we go. We can just about see. So if we pull the prograde over here and say we would burn the prograde, we would burn the ship forward, we'd face towards our direction of travel, and we would increase our thrust at this point. It would increase the apoapsis. Like that. And this wonderful little thing down here is telling us when you should start your burn and when you should stop your burn. So if we wanted to do this, we would start our burn in about 9.5 minutes. We'd have to burn for 28 seconds, and it would require a delta V of 426 to achieve. If we just increase this, we are in completely the wrong place for the maneuver mode. I was just trying to show you how maneuvering sort of works. But if we go up to a little bit more, we can see that at this point here, it's calling it a vehicle intersect. But at this point here, we would intersect with the orbit, not the orbit. Yeah, no, the orbit. We'd intercept with the orbit of the Mun. What we wouldn't do is actually intercept the Mun. At this point, the Mun is over here. So we are intercepting its orbit over here, but the Mun is actually over here at that point. So what we want to do is move our maneuver node around here. Give it a little bit more of a juice. And a little bit more juice. We want to make sure we're always intercepting it. Ah, there we go. So, if we burned here, we would be intercepting its orbit here whilst the Mun is over here. If we add just a little bit more to it, we can now see, and this is all, a lot of this is relatively new. We can see where we would intercept the orbit of the Mun, and over here where the actual Mun is, it shows us where we would actually pass by the planet, and gives us an idea of how close we would get as well. So what we can do then is we can play around and say, okay, well, if I do this, we're actually going to hit the Mun, which is technically what we're trying to do. In an ideal world where you working for NASA, you don't just aim your ship at the surface of the moon and then do a retrograde burn to slow yourself down at the last minute. No, because that would end in tears. You would actually do something like this. And then once you got to about here, I think, you would then start burning retrograde to slow you down. So rather than slingshotting around the moon, or the Mun in this case, you would create an orbit around the Mun. If I had more engines, maybe we would try that, but we don't. So maybe we'll just try flinging our ship into the Mun. I'm going to just play around a little bit just to try and get... So we can't quite intersect the Mun with the amount of thrust we're using, but that gets pretty close. So, and over here you can see our orbit. Because we are technically slingshotting ourselves by the Mun and being affected by its gravity, our actual travel plan, if you like, has got a bit of an S in it, look. So, what we want to do, it's going to be 16 minutes if we sit here and just do nothing. But if we increase, we can do a time warp down here. Watch our craft go approaching carbon. Oh, we're 70,000 meters off. Yeah, so you can only do certain time warp speeds at certain distances. I don't believe it's the case so much in this game. I may be wrong again. In fact, just assume I'm wrong in everything I'm talking about. But in the original game, the reason that was because of the physics. The game couldn't really handle the physics of orbits and intersecting bodies at 100 times speed, so it enforced this limit where you could only do slower time warps when you were closer to celestial bodies or anything else like that, just to try and make sure that you don't get gremlins in the system. What is it they call it? It's not the squid. Space? I Can't think of the name. Space Kraken. The Kraken. There's a Kraken, in inverted commas, which exists in Kerbal Space Program. And when things go immediately horrible wrong for no reason and your craft falls apart, and like, I don't remember hitting the space bar, but we definitely lost our main booster. That's a little bit of the Kraken at work. It's a very poor example, but yeah. So now that our altitude is starting to increase because we are past the periapsis, we can increase the time warp a little bit more. We need to be a little bit careful we don't miss it. Oh, I missed it because I hit the wrong button. Okay, right, full burn, go. Take a little look at us here. I haven't lit the engine. Now we're doing a full burn. So you can see that we're blasting. This is sort of, that doesn't look great. This bit, the actual ground texture looks nice. This bit, not so much. So you can see that where we are burning, that has now become our periapsis. And our apoapsis is now flinging itself over here. We were late burning. Quite significantly late burning. So I don't know how well this is going to go. We'll have to just watch this when it reaches the orbital plane, the orbital path of the moon. Damn it. And see if we are still going to intersect it or not. We may find that we're going to miss it by an absolute country mile. So when it gets a bit closer, I'm ready with the X button to turn the engines off completely. Oh, do you know what? Planned it all along. So the yellow path was our maneuver node path, and the blue path is our actual path. And you can see over here, look. You can see over here that we are getting stupidly close to the Mun, even closer than our orbital maneuver would have gotten us. So we can get rid of our orbital maneuver node because we don't need that anymore. We can come over here, have a look at us, have a look at the Mun over there in the distance, and we can increase time. Watch Kerbin fade away behind us, looking very nice again from there. And watch the moon, or the Mun, I did it again, come hurtling towards us. Now I'm going to tell it to go into retrograde. I don't think it's going to do it while we're time warping. No, it's locked at the moment. If we, no, not do that. Just so we're pointing in the right direction. We want to be pointing away. That's not, target? Anti-target? Oh, I wouldn't say that's the direction we're facing in. But, I don't know. We'll head towards the moon and we'll figure it out, right? The Mun! Come on, mans. What are you doing? Just going to check the map and make sure that nothing has changed and we still are heading towards the Mun with a nice close approach. You can see, look, that our path here is quite wildly different. As we get caught up in the gravity well of the Mun, our path is pulled quite sharply out of line. Like it almost goes back on itself a little bit, doesn't it? That's our end-to-end SOI. I don't know what SOI stands for. Something orbital something. I don't know. I can't think of anything. Oh, I didn't mean to. Oh, that's... Oh, right. It's the arrow keys next to the M that increased time. I wondered where that was. That's probably the same as it was in Kerbal. The OG Kerbal, but yeah. As I said, very rusty with these things. You know, you don't have to spin around like that. There's probably a key to stop it doing that, isn't there? Oh, that's the tracking station, okay. Right. Right. Yeah, we were paying no attention. And now it has nicely oriented itself to our retrograde to slow us down. We are pretty much at our periapsis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start burning. We're going to watch this path over here, and it's going to start creating an orbit around the Mun. Like so. And if we stopped burning about here, we are now in orbit around the moon. We have achieved orbit around another body in our solar system. on our first flight. Obviously, I had the test flight beforehand, and also I did just launch one of our initial crash straight into the launch pad on purpose, but you know, technically it's not our first flight. But here we are in orbit around the moon. Oh, isn't that exciting? So now we have two options. We could just continue burning retrograde and get our apoapsis down. The most efficient thing to do, though, seeing as we have so little fuel left. I actually need to land this thing. The most efficient thing to do is going to be to time warp until we are at the apoapsis and then retrograde burn there, which will then decrease the height of our periapsis. So that's what we're going to do just for efficiency. Just for a little bit of efficiency, because there is no way we are getting this craft back to Kerbal. No way, Jose. Make sure we are facing the retrograde, which we are. We are now behind. Look at how slow it rotates. Drives me mad. Right. Full burn. And we're hitting the moon. There we go. That's all we need. Just a little tiny bit just to kill our orbit and just to reduce our periapsis to where we're at a point where we're going to launch ourselves into the moon. So now we're going to speed time up a little bit. We probably don't need that view at the moment. We're going to find, I was going to say find where the mun is. There it is, right beneath us. I would like to, oh, this over here. Let's extend our legs just in, you know, some sort of weird assumption we're going to get anywhere close to the moon. Looks like we might be landing on the dark side of the moon, which is always a bit of a pain. So we are currently about 58,000 meters above the ground. We are orbiting at about 400 meters a second. That's quite a lot. At the moment, obviously, if we hit the moon, we are going to hit the moon hard. Ah! I had to sneeze, so I'm also throttle keys, which is why it popped up that message. Right. So we're just going to watch our ground height, and I'm not sure if this is a true ground height or if this is above sea level, because it could be that we're landing on, you know, like a mountain plateau which is 12,000 meters above sea level, so this could be quite misleading. Something to bear in mind, if nothing else. And once we start getting a little bit closer, we don't look like we're going to hit a, you know, 10,000 meter high mountain, so we'll keep letting it go to this maybe around, this is where I'm really super rusty. I'm going to say about 10,000 meters, and then we'll start thinking about burning. You can see, because we are being pulled by the gravity of the mun, our actual speed is increasing. So where we were 400 meters before, we are now 560 meters per second. Which is, oh, we were about 10,000 meters. Right, so our... Sort yourself out, please sort yourself out. There we go. We are facing retrograde. We are 10,000 meters above the ground. We need to burn off a lot of this speed, and that's what we're going to do now. Oh, this says our speed is 700 meters a second. That's interesting. Take a quick look over here. Just want to see what our sort of... Yeah, still quite a gentle descent, isn't it? If we increase this a little bit more... Right then. Right then. We are now going to be plummeting down to the mun quite rapidly. I'm wondering why our retrograde is still... Oh, there we go. It is changing now. I was going to say, it didn't seem to be really changing to make our ship point down all that much. So I'm trying to think. When you land on Kerbin, I think you want to land at about 9 meters a second. With the moon, there's a lot less gravity on the moon, but you don't want to bounce too much either. We don't have a lot of delta V. So let's just leave it for a second. Again, it's a shame we're not on the light side of the moon, but hey-ho, we'll take it. 5,000 meters. It says 5,000 meters. It says 3,000 meters. It's very hard to tell how high we actually are. We are starting to pick up a bit of speed, so I'm going to burn off a little bit more again. I genuinely have no idea how close we actually are to this area. So we're only 1,000 meters. We don't want to burn too much because we'd actually be at risk of starting to take off again. We are almost pointing directly down though. You can see our retrograde is pretty much pointing 180 degrees down. I think 15 to 20 meters a second landing on the Mun would probably be okay. He says. It says 400 meters. Now ideally, again, most efficiently, you'd just be doing your burn at the last second. So you are conserving as much fuel as possible. But we do not have that luxury. Partly because I can't see where the sodding ground is. But you can see how little thrust we need to actually slow ourselves down. Oh! I'm desperately trying to write it. I'm desperately trying to write it. Well, we landed! We landed! That was, disastrous. That was disastrous. We've got no engine left. We've only got one of our legs. And we've landed on our side. But we have landed, quite helpfully, with our access hatch. Not pointing towards the ground. You successfully landed or splashed down. You can recover your vessel. I definitely can't recover my vessel. How would I recover my vessel from the moon? What I would like to do... Maybe you do it up... Yeah. Is this... Many control systems consume electric charge. Without power, none of these function. This readout shows how much charge you got. Excellent. Right. There he is. I don't know what this guy's name is. Bill. Of course it's Bill. It's always Bill to start. Here's Bill on the moon. What I'd love to do is... Oh my word, that's way too far. I just wanted to get a bit of daylight. I didn't think it was going to go past quite that fast. Can we see? I don't know which way the sun comes from. Come on, daylight. Where are you? Oh, there we go. There we go. Here he is on the moon. We can run him around. We can do little jumps. Woo! You can also use your backpack as a sort of a jetpack with RCS thrusters, if you so needed to, which sometimes you do if you forget to put a ladder on your craft and you're like, oh damn, gonna have to try to fly up there. But here we've landed on the moon. Well, I'm impressed we've landed, if nothing else. It was, in pretty much every way possible, very Kerbal. You know, losing our main booster, our very disastrous landing, and were this, oh, it's gently rocking side to side, were this actually a game we were going to be following through, then we would at this point be thinking, well, we need to send a rescue craft up to get Bill now, because we've really messed this up. And these pods can only hold one Kerbal, I'm pretty sure, so we'd have to have a bigger craft come up, or an automated craft come up, to pick him up and rescue him. And he would be stuck here, waiting for Lord knows how long, until we could get him rescued. Did he just fart? Is he farting in his suit? He's definitely farting in his suit. Bill, mate, that's disgusting. You got to breathe that for like another year until we get up to you, mate. Terrible stuff. Well, my intention was to get to the moon and then have an attempt to get back to Kerbin. Had we not lost our main booster, we probably could have used that. We had so much Delta V, we probably could have used that to get pretty much all the way to the Mun, and then try to use our engine and maybe a little bit of luck, definitely not skill, to try to re-enter Kerbin's atmosphere. But it wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. But we have managed to get to the Mun, which is something. So I'm going to leave that there. This is just going to be a first look. I would love to come back to Kerbal once we have a couple more updates. As I say, particularly once there's a little bit of structure on it, that's what I like to see. I like to have some structure in there. But yeah, really looking forward to seeing more of it. I don't know about you. I didn't notice any performance drops whatsoever. We're currently running at about 90 frames a second. But yeah, there's nothing much happening here. We didn't have the most complex vehicle in the world, so that probably didn't hurt too much. I would say graphics-wise, I probably would have expected a little better from a game released in 2023. But I'm sure there's time to fix these things, and if the developers don't fix them, the modders definitely will. Mostly though, I'm excited to see what the developers do with their general roadmap of getting us into Interstellar with, like I say, not trade necessarily, but resource gathering, that sort of thing. I'm really interested to see that come into play. Really interested to see that come into play. So there we go. Kerbal Space Program 2. I hope you enjoyed that. I should probably also apologise for not doing many videos for a while now, I suppose. I've mentioned it in a recent Empires video, and I've probably mentioned it on stream as well. But I've been very busy, which is why there's not been very videos. I've been very busy with work and children, and I've been trying to renovate my nan's old house, which I inherited, and that's just been one thing after another. And then I had like threatened by lawyers and people calling the council on me for planning permissions that they say I didn't get, which I definitely didn't need. People were just lying to the council. So it's been a tough old time. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I really, really do. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. Leave me a little comment down below if you want to see more Kerbal, even in its super early access stage. If you want me to have a go at doing something else, let me know. Otherwise, and subscribe. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing as well. That'd be great. Don't forget I stream on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. now. We've pushed it back that little fraction extra just to make sure I get enough time to get wee little AJ down to sleep. That's my child, by the way. I'm not talking about like, a wife or a goldfish. My little 3-year-old girl. I mentioned earlier my cat was going a bit mad scratching at the door. I thought she left the door and went back to bed, but I've just looked over to the door and she's literally just like collapsed against it, like she's just given up all hope of ever leaving this room again. Much like Bill's going to give up all hope of ever leaving the moon ever again, or the mun ever again. I did it again at the very last moment. You fool! And as always, thank you very much for joining me.